After you take the lid off. After you take the lid off, you just pass it through 2 or 3 times. I've done it 3 just to show you, but all you've got to do is that, and you're done. The reason to flame the opening of the stop culture, it kills any bacteria that are on that rim, number 1. And number 2, it heats up the air on the inside of this tube, all that air space. And hot air, does it rise or does it fall?
Rise.
Rises. So now we've got warm air coming out of the tube. If there were any bacteria up here, they can't fall in. Okay, because hot air is pushing them out. So, flame the opening of the stop culture. Step 3, you stick your loop in. I like to give it a swish. You don't have to. Okay. You swish it around. You've now picked up bacteria. Okay, so that's step 3, pick up bacteria with the loop. Step 4, we're going to flame the opening of the stop culture again. Okay, so after you pick up the bacteria, flame the opening of the stop culture again. Again, pass it through the flame a couple of times, and put the lid back on. Just in case we did get any bacteria, we've killed them on the surface before we put the lid back on. So now I've got a loop that has bacteria on it. Step 5, take your new tube, your sterile nutrient broth tube, and we're going to do the same thing. Hold it still in the pinky of the hand that you write with. Use the other hand to rotate the tube. Okay. And what do you think we're going to do the top of this thing?
Burn it.
Burn it. Flame it. Okay, so step 5, flame the opening of the new tube. Flame the opening of the new tube. Again, 2 or 3 times through the fire is plenty. Then step 6, put the bacteria in. Switch them around. So they're mixed in the nutrient broth. Guesses on what's next? Flame the opening of the new tube again. Okay, so we're up to what, step 7 now? Flame the opening of the new tube again. Put the lid back on.
And that's the take.
That's the nutrient broth. That's the nutrient broth.
You said swish it around a couple times once it's in there.
Yep. And then flame the opening of the new tube before you put the lid back on. Final step, step 8. Flame the loop one last time, just like the very first step. You're shooting for the hottest part of the fire. Start at the very back of the loop, let that turn bright orange. Slowly pull it forward so the middle turns bright orange. Hold it there until it does. And then the end with the loop on it. Hold it there until the whole thing's bright orange so that we know that we've killed any bacteria that were on it. Does that make sense? Alright, so quickly, step 1, flame the loop. Step 2, flame the opening of the stop culture. Step 3, pick up the bacteria. Step 4, flame the opening of the stop culture again before you put the lid back on. Step 5, with the new tube, flame the opening.
That's the NB.
That's nutrient broth. Step 6, put the bacteria in, switch them around. Step 7, flame the opening of the new tube again before you put the lid back on. And step 8, flame the loop.
The only question I have is, at first you said that was the inoculate, now you call it the loop. Like, I don't get it. I'm just trying to understand.
Inoculating loop is the long word, but it often gets shortened to just loop.
Loop, okay. Like L-U-K-E?
L-O-O-P.
Because
it's got a loop on the
that's what I'm
end.
trying to understand what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, like a bubble wand. You're blowing bubbles as a kid, the miracle bubbles, and it's got a loop on the end, a circle. This has got a circle on the end of it. L-O-O-P.
Thank you.
Now, for this auger tube, you're going to follow that exact same set of procedures, right? Aseptic technique. Everything's exactly the same with your bacteria. But when you're ready to inoculate this, pretend I've got bacteria, right, on the end of my loop, and I'm ready to stick them in. The lid on this, remember, doesn't screw, right? It just pulls off. So you're holding that in your pinky, just pull it off. You're still flaming the opening of this. But when you add bacteria to the slant, you're not going to swish it around, obviously, because this is a solid tube. So you're going to stick your loop in and move your whole arm. See how my wrist stays still? Move your whole arm to draw one line up the surface of that slant. Like you're taking a pencil and you're trying to draw a straight line up the surface of that auger. Now, keep your wrist still. Notice what happens if I bend my wrist. The loop gets all bent up, you dig into the auger, you make a mess. Okay, so when you're writing, you bend your wrist a lot. You want to keep your wrist still and move your whole arm to draw that straight line. So you don't end up doing that. Yes, ma'am.
Question, both of those were agar, right? The first one was the deep
Nutrient broth, no, this is nutrient broth liquid that we did first. This is nutrient auger slant.
slant. Okay, that's what I was trying to, okay. So this is nutrient broth.
And you still flame the opening before you put the lid back on.
So basically the same steps.
Same steps, just you're not swishing the bacteria around in solid auger. You're drawing one straight line up the slanted surface. So for lab 7, if you're looking at your procedure, find your materials page for me. That lists all the things you need. Somebody when you get there, tell me what page it's on. Materials at the top. 54. In that material section on page 54, you'll see a list of bacteria that you're using. Bacillus subtilis, Serratia marcescens, Micrococcus luteus. You see that big list? Okay, those are all of the bacteria that are in this rack of stock culture tubes. For each one that's listed there, you need one liquid and one solid auger that you're putting each of those bacteria in. So Bacillus subtilis goes into liquid and to auger. Okay, that's true for all of them. You've got Sharpie markers in your top drawer. You need to label these tubes. B subtilis on each one so that you know what's in each tube next time. So label them all with the bacteria you're putting in. And again, for every bacteria listed on page 54, you're doing one broth and one auger tube.
Okay.
And you're putting the bacteria into each.
So how's the bacteria? I understand. Okay, I know we need a broth and a solid slant for each bacteria.
You're going to repeat that whole aseptic technique I just did
Right,
twice.
the inoculate loop. Do we put in the bacteria first?
Yeah, well, you flame the opening of the tube. That's all that list we just made.
Right, I have that.
Okay, that's what you're going to do twice. You're going to do all of that, putting them into liquid, same bacteria, follow that
I guess
same
the step I'm
procedure.
missing is where do we pick up the bacteria from? We put the
They're in
bacteria.
the stock culture.
Oh, they're
Stock
already
culture
be
has
in it.
bacteria in it.
Oh, got it. Now, right.
Somebody else have their hand up?
Yeah, do you want us to first use the slants instead of the deeps, or does
Yes,
it
you
matter?
have to use the slants for this.
What are the deeps for then?
We are going to melt
They
them
also
next
stock
time
culture.
and add the bacteria when the auger's still liquid. That's a different setup. Okay, so one broth and one slant tube for every bacteria on page 54. Make sure everybody in your group practices inoculating. I don't want you to nominate one person to do all this. Okay, so rotate through. Everybody's got to practice inoculating. We're not done yet, guys. We've got to talk about lab 8 too. So, any questions on 7 before we go to 8?
10 tubes in all, right?
Oh, 16.
Yeah,
Questions?
When we label the tubes, do we just write on that?
Directly on the glass. Yeah, sometimes they have little white parts that you were supposed to write on, but they're already covered. So just write directly on the glass, B subtilis. You also need to come up with a group name for yourself and get a piece of tape, which you've got a couple rules up here, you've got some in your drawer, and label your test tube rack with your group name so you know which one's yours next time. Also, I'd ask that when you go to put your test tubes away, that you make sure they're in one of these racks. The ones with the little fingers sticking up are smaller, they take up less space, so please try and use one of these. You can use one of these to work with if you want, but when you're ready to turn them in, they need to be in one of these kind of racks, just to save some space. All right, so after you get them all inoculated, how you turn them in, they're going into the incubator. Okay, the incubator is the piece of equipment we use to grow bacteria. We've got 2 of them in here. These 2 guys right here, incubators. Yours will always go on the top shelf of this one. It's got my name on it. It says Monday, Wednesday morning. So all of your stuff will always be in here. Okay, so this is your incubator, piece of equipment used to grow bacteria. It's set at 37 degrees, which is about 98.6 Fahrenheit. Which number do I want you to know?
Celsius.
Celsius, the metric system, because this is science. So 37 degrees Celsius, which is about body temperature. And they're going to stay in there for between 18 and 24 hours. Because that is the amount of time it will take for the bacteria that you put into this tube to grow well enough that you can see it next time. If they stay in more than 24 hours, they're going to start dying. You will not be here in 24 hours to look at them or pull them out, right? We don't need to get until Monday. So our lab manager will take them out for you in 24 hours, put them in the refrigerator, which will slow their growth and keep them alive until you come back on Monday. So, incubator different than autoclave, right? Autoclave's for killing stuff. Incubator's for helping it grow. 37 degrees is the optimum temperature for our bacteria. It's the temperature they prefer. We get the best growth out of that. And 18 to 24 hours is the right amount of time. In lab 8, I'm going to flip over to lab 8 for me. We're going to do something very similar. We're going to follow the same sort of steps of aseptic technique. Now we're going to be inoculating agar that's in a petri dish. Alright, so, petri dish, in case you've never had to spell it. One year I didn't put it on the board and I got peach tree on somebody's quiz. So, petri dish, not peach tree. Petri dish and plate are the same thing. It's two terms for the same piece of equipment. A petri dish is a plate in microbiology. And ours are plastic. They've got a lid. And then the agar is in the bottom. The lid is much shorter, right, than the bottom. You want to, when working with these, not leave them open for very long. Okay? I don't want to see any of this. When I walk by, your petri dish is just open, sitting there, and you've got your loop over here, and you're talking to somebody. You leave it open that long, fungi and bacteria in the room are falling in and contaminating it. Okay, so lids stay on until you're ready to work with it. Now, when you go to label these with the bacteria that you're putting in, you always write on the bottom, on the side that has the agar in it. Because if you have 10 petri dishes and you've labeled the lids and you take the lids off of 10 petri dishes, how do you know what's in here anymore? Because the lid's labeled, not this. So, always label the side that's got agar in it with the bacteria that you're putting in and your grouping. And you want to try and do that writing as small as you can along sort of the edge. Right? You don't want to write V subtilis, and then next time you can't see through your writing. Okay, so try and write small and kind of off to the side. All right, so you can do that first. Label it with the bacteria that you're using. You do that with your Sharpie markers right there in the back drawer on the bottom side. And while you're labeling, also draw yourself a T. You want to divide this plate into 4 sections. Okay, you're doing, again, you're writing this on the agar side of the petri dish. What we're going to do with the streak plate is spread the bacteria across the surface. And what we're looking for are isolated colonies. What we want when we're done is to have isolated colonies. An isolated colony is a mound of bacteria, not touching any other mounds of bacteria. That's why it's isolated. A mound of bacteria, not touching any others, that all came from one original bacterial cell. So big mound of bacteria, not touching any others, that originally came from one bacterial cell. Aseptic technique, we're going to follow the first 4 steps exactly the same. Flame your loop, flame the opening of your stock culture, pick up your bacteria from the stock culture, flame the opening again, put your lid back on. So, we're assuming now that I've got a loop here that has bacteria on it.
Right.
The way I like to work with this is to keep my petri dish with the lid down, so I can pick up just the side that has agar in it and leave the lid there on the table. Works better for me that way. Okay, but you do it however you want. Okay. So, switching to my pen, let's pretend this is my loop that's got bacteria on it. What we're going to do is spread them out. Should be a nice continuous line in the first section, whatever section you decide is first. Right, so doing that with the real petri dish, again, pretend that I've got bacteria on this. You want to, again, move your whole arm. You don't want to move your wrist. You're going to dig into the agar if you do that motion. Okay, so hold it level, move your whole arm to streak back and forth. Then you put it down, because now you got to flame the loop. Okay, you dipped it into bacteria, you spread them out in the first section, and then flame the loop, same procedure, make sure the whole thing turns right on.